What's up, everyone? My name is Marques Ceasar-Lopez. I am the tubist and external relations liaison for the Cortina Brass. This is my compadre for this video. So if you want to introduce yourself, Sam.
Sure, I'm Sam Anderson. I am the media producer for Cortina Brass and I play the trombone. Marquise and I, we're the low end of the brass quintet. And so today we're going to kind of explain how we conceptualize our functions, our roles in the brass quintet setting. All right.
Absolutely. For some reason, our group decided to let us run our own videos. So
Very smart,
you
very
all enjoy.
considerate. All right, well, I think we should start maybe starting with the low end of it. So
Sure.
start with tuba and yeah.
Definitely. As a tuba in the chamber ensemble, we've played different settings. We do a lot of brass quintet. We've done sextets. We've done sextet with other instruments. And for the most part, tuba always has, unless there's a certain piece, my job is the bass voice. A lot of times I am the motor. I keep tempos and I kind of push tempos or, listen in to what the lead trumpets are doing when they want to have any rubatos or any melodic lines. And then as well, a big part of my job is holding intonation together and kind of laying the foundation for the group. My parts don't tend to be as technical when we are playing in group settings, but there is a lot more expectation as a tuba player to have my parts fully learned, to know what is going on around me. And so that way I always have that foundation for everyone else to kind of sit on and just keep and to build from there.
Let's dig into a few of those points before I do my trombone spiel. Your role as the bass voice of the quintet, when you're trying to push the tempo, like if you notice, oh, the rest of the group, they're kind of like falling in love with their sound, how do you kind of get the group to drive forward? What are things you think about, or what do you do?
Definitely. One thing that I will say that I do not do, and this is something that every tuba player should hear, is when people say to push the tempo, that does not mean rush.
Mm.
Think about where you are emphasizing your notes and where you are hitting specifically on your articulations. I find a lot of the times if I'm staying and hitting hard on the front of notes, specifically for like quick eighth notes or even just quarter notes, that will push the tempo more and that will give the rest of the group a footing to be able to kind of keep them going and keep that motor running. Pushing the tempo, once again, does not mean rushing the tempo.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great distinction. Do you do anything in your own individual practice to work on playing ahead of the beat or on top of the beat or behind the beat, whatever you need to do? Or do you do anything to focus on the groove? Like, what are the things you do for tempo in your daily
I mean, I
practice?
do play with a metronome quite a bit, and so I will kind of mess around. Once I understand my part and where I'm going, I can kind of play around with where I set the accents and where I'm setting my articulation in the beat, no matter where we're going. One thing that we do distinguish specifically with our group a lot of times is setting that metronome marking of we are doing it at 72. We may be doing it at 73, but we kind of stick to that. And because we have that, it's easier for me to actually practice and have different ways to bring to the group and to be able to call an audible if I need to.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge. Having a hey, this is the tempo we're picking. Go ahead and make sure you're practicing your parts at this tempo. Make sure it's up to snuff before we
Absolutely.
meet. Yeah, I think that's super important. Anything on intonation you want to address in a group setting?
Spending a lot of time with a tuner, playing your scales, doing long tones. I mean, you and I have spent a lot of time together just playing long tones together in your basement. So it's like finding that, sitting in your spot and finding what feels comfortable. Another thing for me personally, this may not be for everybody, but that I find is, as a tuba player, I'm always about my breath control. So like making sure that I have enough air in my lungs to be able to play. So that way my tone is also great because my tone also kind of goes with the intonation, you know?
Mm, yeah.
But um, honestly, just making sure that you have a good ear and are listening to the group as you play, and as we play in chamber ensembles, intonation is going to kind of go up and down, so it is all about listening to who you're playing with. And if you can have a good enough ear as a tuba player to be able to sit down and like really find that middle pitch, or if you have that bass note, that's something for, once again, everyone to build off of, then they can find an easier way to find that matching chord.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. All
Yeah,
right. What else am I missing? That's kind of it, right? Intonation and being the motor.
pretty
Uh,
much. I mean, I think I just want to reiterate, like it is like tuba is the foundation. So, if we're know your parts, know what is playing, listen to the piece before you show up and play. Like that is just, yeah, that is the bare minimum. So,
Agreed.
yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that we sit in my basement every now and then before practice or after rehearsals. We'll get together and do long tones or do warm up exercises. Um, one thing I notice for the trombone end of the low brass side, my goal is more I'm kind of mediating between the lowest end and the mid to high end. So the tuba and the trumpets. I want to make sure everyone's kind of cohesive, and one way I do that is through my sound. Of course, my intonation has to be spot on. I have to really blend with the tuba before I can blend with the high brass. Um, but one thing I do is I change my sound concept depending on who in the group I'm playing with. And for me, on trombone at least, I have that kind of luxury, whereas maybe the trumpets, it might be a little more squirrely if they kind of play around with their sound production. But for me, I notice if I can kind of fit my sound to meet the trumpet's needs when I need to, or meet my sound to meet the tuba needs when I need to. That's been really productive in the world of brass quintet playing. All right.
Yeah.
Uh,
You actually
yeah.
elaborate a little bit more. Like, what do you mean by like changing your sound concept? Like, how do you practice that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So when I'm playing in brass quintet in particular, it's crystal clear to me, at least, who I'm playing with and who I'm supporting, and that's a big thing for the trombones. In my concept of sound is I want to really lay a good foundation uh, for the higher brass. So I'm the bridge is the way I see it. I'm the bridge between the tuba and the trumpets and the horn.
Mhm.
Um, so when I'm playing lines with just the tuba, I kind of try and spread my sound out and bring just enough chord that the tuba and the trombone sound really is going to project into whatever space we're playing in. And when I'm playing with the higher end of brass, I really focus on kind of tightening up my sound and kind of blending with them. Ways I practice that is I'll get out my tonal energy app and I'll change the sound setting with my drones. And I can change it depending on what instrument I want to work on matching. That's a good way for me to kind of blend. Another thing I do is I just play um, transcriptions with different instruments. So I'll try and play a tune by ear, or maybe I'll find a YouTube video of like a jazz player uh, doing a solo, and I'll try and play along with that sound concept. And kind of mixing genres of music really helps me, especially in brass quintet where we need to play every kind of style of music. It's not just here's the Western canon. We do contemporary music, we do jazz, and we do a lot of pop too. So being able to kind of jump from one style to another is a big thing for chamber music playing, I think. So for me, for the trombone, the sound concept's a big focus, and blending with whoever we're playing with, whoever's the melody, and whoever's really I need to attach myself to. That's the my main focus during rehearsals.
Why don't you talk about how you match articulations and like your thoughts
Mm,
about working with that in a group, especially as the trombone, if you're not necessarily
sure.
leading the motif.
Yeah. That's a articulation's huge in brass quintet. I'm a freelance trombonist. I play bass trombone and tenor trombone, right? So a lot of the time I'm sitting in orchestra, and I have to have a specific kind of articulation to fit in with the whole orchestral sound. But brass quintet's kind of cool. You don't need to give it so much juice. Your tongue doesn't have to work as hard. For me, it's more of a lighter, floating sound generally, and that kind of mixes better with the high and low end of the quintet spectrum. For me, I really focus on creating a crystal clear articulation that matches what the trumpets are doing. And if my articulation matches, if my fronts of my notes matches the trumpet articulation, generally the rest of the players in a group will join in, and articulations will be cohesive throughout the group. So a lot of what I do in my own practicing is I'll work on legato tonguing loud and legato tonguing quietly. Then I'll work on staccato tonguing really loud and then really quietly. And then I kind of try and do both in all ranges of the dynamic spectrum. And I find that that's really helpful for me, my tongue to be flexible, and it makes a big difference for me, the nimble tongue.
Absolutely. Honestly, like I do a very similar thing in my own practice as well. I do long, like or low to high range arpeggiations, and I work on doing, I go from like legato tongue to more of a dot tongue to a staccato to an accented staccato to like a real dot.
Yeah,
And I go from like my lowest range up until until it's a high range, and just working on, because, we also have quite a big range when it comes to playing, especially in the context of like I can be playing below the staff, like 5 or 6 ledger lines to 2 or 3 ledger lines above the staff.
hmm,
If I'm supplementing the trombone, like it's just, and I know you sometimes play down in the pits with me, so
yeah. Oh, it's where I like to be, that's for sure.
right,
Yeah,
right,
I notice, and this is something I hear in a lot of younger players. I notice in their articulations, it's one way. They have one way their tongue moves, and it never changes. So it's
right.
always either crystal clear or it's always a little sloppy. Um, on trombone in particular, we have the slidey thing, you know? So it's really important that we do things that make our slide and our tongue line up with our
Right,
air.
right.
So a lot of what I do is scalular exercise. I'll do diatonic and then chromatic exercises, and sometimes I'll mix and match those. And then I'll do that. I'll do that so I can get my articulation in legato in whatever style I need. I'll get my articulation really, really clean. But your tongue's a muscle, so making sure your muscle's kind of flexible and strong is really important, I think. Yeah, there's one more thing in an articulation that I think isn't talked about a whole lot, and it's been something I've been focusing on my own playing recently. It's the release of notes,
Mm,
and it's a big thing because almost every group I've heard, like high school up to professional, they all play their articulations generally together. It's pretty easy to come in as a group together, but releasing together can totally change the nature of a brass quintet performance. And I think it's important how the tuba releases notes. Do you think of your releases and the group sound?
I absolutely do. This might be something that we touch on with future series, but like I will touch on like right now, like especially with tuba playing, I notice depending on the hall that we're in, even when I cut off my note's most likely going to last longer than everybody's.
Mm,
And actually, this was going to go into more of a sound concept idea that I was going to talk with you about, that I want to bring up, especially with tuba and trombone. It's like, like I do have to kind of visualize exactly where I need to cut off in my own breath, just so I know where the end of the note is going to ring out in the hall that we're in, and then as well that's going to match with everybody else.
yeah, that's a huge thing. And knowing what space you're in, what are you in, a dry or a wet room? How long is that release going to take? And you mentioned something that I think is really important for especially younger musicians to hear is the length of your release. You should hold a little bit longer than the higher brass. It kind of trickles down. Trumpets release, they cue the release, so they should be releasing with their release, and everyone else is reacting to that. And it just so happens that the low end of the spectrum, the low brass players, we're the dumbest, and it takes us a little longer to realize. And I think because of that, we've kind of come into this, oh, we all we want to hear the low end release at the end. It's like a cloud that the rest of the sound gets to float off of, and I think
Mhm.
it's a nice thing.
Absolutely. We're just trudging through the marshes in the bottom while everyone gets to fly above us, you know?
That's right, just a couple of dumb guys. Oh,
One thing I actually that did brought up while you were talking about sound concepts. First, I was going to talk about, the sound concept for the tuba, especially in a chamber setting, is kind of like this overarching umbrella.
hmm.
And especially with certain, I mean, there's certain times when it's not, but like when we're playing like super slow songs, if it's something that we're like really feeling it and like we need that emotional setting, not only is it setting the foundation, not only is it setting the tonality, but it creates this kind of space around. Like I can fill up a hall with my horn. My horn is conical in nature. That's just naturally what it does. And it's pointed upwards, so it basically just spreads. And, the thing that I've always knew about like playing with trombone is when we have the same line, we almost counterbalance each other, where a tuba will soften out the edges of the trombone, but the trombone will help pierce through and make whatever we're playing really shine.
Yeah, I love those moments when we're playing in octaves together.
Hmm.
Uh, the the sound is exactly what I have in my head. And as a bass trombonist, I love playing with the tuba. So
Right.
getting to the tuba and the trombone, they really complement each other well. And when it's doubled, it really leads the sound. It like pierces the whole hall. It's a cool thing. It travels twice as far as it would when it's just one of us. There's
Right.
that lush tuba sound, and I get to sit right on top of that and help. I'm like the sails that help it make its way through. It's
That's
kind
right.
of fun.
We should maybe talk about playing together in the setting, like the tuba and trombone. Like, what do we think of when we're performing or rehearsing, like in the same space together?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Uh, one thing that we had discussed before and we talk about a lot is kind of like the physicality, just like the physicality and nature of it, where you and I lean into each other, we'll make eye contact, like we actually like are physically in each other's space half the times. Like there's times where I remember I think uh we were doing our recital back in October, and both of us just like leaned in real close to each other and be like, all right, am I hearing this right? Are we playing in the same, are we in tune together? Like it's
yeah. You know that brings me. It reminds me of something. You're not stuck to your seat when you're playing. You can move around, and your physical proximity to the other musicians around you really makes a difference. If you're far away from someone, it's harder to play with them, to be in the same sound concept, to be in the same groove, and to be in the same intonation. And so when I'm playing with you, I definitely make a point to lean all the way in, and I want to make sure we're like one, it's helpful for us, but two, it also shows the audience, hey, these two are playing a line together. I wonder if I can hear them, and it gives them a visual hand to hold and guide them through whatever piece of music we're playing. It really makes a difference for an audience, I think.
and also I just want to give a caveat with that statement as well so people don't take it out of context. We are not playing like clarinet players. We're not out here moving back and forth and rocking around. Like it is, we are moving out of necessity and we still continue to have our foundations, but because we have built our foundation, we are able to move as needed for the music.
Right,
We're not
right.
making a show of dancing and wasting energy either.
Yeah, no,
I feel like
there's
that
that
is something that we
trombone
should
meme.
probably share.
We've all seen the video of the trombonist at the wedding band playing and like dancing all around. That guy's amazing, but his trombone playing might suffer a little bit, you know.
Absolutely. You can't use your air correctly if you're dancing on stage.
Right, right.
Unless that's the performance that you're trying to do.
That's right. And if you're making money doing it, keep
Good
doing
for you.
it. Teach me your ways.
Right.
Um,
I've
yeah,
played tuba tiger rag standing up before, and I've laid down on the ground and played my low note. It's different. It's fun. It's just not always needed.
right. Well, I mean, Chuck in Canadian Brass, he'll rotate the tuba all the way
Or yeah,
around.
or
Yeah,
Monazzle, they'll do cartwheels while playing. It's
yeah, yeah. Play with all their limbs too. It's
right.
there's different strokes for different folks. That's for sure.
And once again, they have their foundation set where they're able to play at a high level while doing it. Don't just try to move to move. Like
Right.
set where you can play well and then you can add on.
Hmm. I noticed there is another benefit to movement, though. Since we've ragged on a lot of moving, I will defend it for a second. Yes, it's helpful for intonation, but also it's helpful for visualizing the groove. The groove's super important. Without a good groove, it's hard to get everyone on the same playing field, I should say.
Right.
Um, so when I lean into you, I know, okay, everyone in this arc can see what we're doing. They can see, oh, I'm leaning in and I'm kind of giving him I give you slight cues like, I'm breathing now. Please
Right.
don't breathe right now. I need to breathe. I'm dying over here. And you do the same thing where you'll give a little extra visual cue of, oh, this is what's going on musically. And for
Hmm.
me, that's huge. You can't do chamber music. We don't have conductors, right? So we're our own conductors.
Yeah.
And in our situation, yeah, we have our trumpet player that really, cues us all in, gets us to start, or whoever starts the piece.
Right.
But once the piece starts, it's a train. We've
It
got to
is a
get each
train.
movement. Yeah, everyone's got to be on the same page. And if you're kind of lost, you can look around and hopefully people aren't statues playing.
Right.
Hopefully they're breathing, they're kind of following the phrasing. They're not dancing, there's no ballet going on, but
Right.
they are showing what's going on musically.
I had a teacher in undergrad that I was actually our quintet coach. He used to talk to us about pillars in music. This is probably not for this series, but I'm going to say it anyways.
Let's go down that rabbit hole.
Pillars of music, of like identifying when things start to get off track. Where are the moments where we can all come back together, when we can hear where someone is and find that moment?
Hmm.
And that can be a recap situation. That could just be a modulation. That could just come randomly where we're like, oh, we've all hit here, but I think we're supposed to be here. And then all of a sudden we all come in at the same spot. It's so cool when it happens. Reacting versus anticipation. I have a very strong feeling about either one. It is important to react. It is important to know, like to hear what is being played because no performance is the same. You
Hmm.
may have somebody that decides to, we're doing a fast piece and they just go lightning speed and we don't have a choice but to be like, you know what? I'm not going to slow them down. I'm going to keep going with it,
Yeah.
which is, yeah.
As two
Sorry.
bigger, larger men, we don't move quickly, just for the audience to know.
You
And
speak for
so,
yourself. I speak. I move
well,
pretty
you
quick.
can just wiggle your fingers, I guess.
I push my buttons.
Yeah, and I notice this in duets too with people. Some people are really like, here's what's going on in the music. Let me lay it down. It's my way, and I'm not really worried about what you're doing. You can miss all the notes you want. You can, be it with me or not. But here it is. There's
Hmm.
something to be said for that. But generally speaking, as the low brass members of a group, we don't usually decide on tempo, on musicality things. Usually we're reacting to other musicians. And
Yep.
that means we need our big, big, huge ears on so we can hear everything going on. We need to know the piece really well. You've mentioned this before. Um, but a lot of what we do is reacting or responding to what's happening. Usually in rehearsal, we're reacting, and then in performances, we're anticipating. Because
Hmm.
we know each other's playing for a performance. Like we know, oh, this partial usually trumpet two is a little slower on this, or we know a trumpet one's going to be really on top of the beat, so we can kind of jump in with that. Um, yeah, yeah. Do you have
So
the
wording wise, I actually just want to. I really liked what you said about responding earlier. I definitely want to focus more on responding rather than the word anticipating.
okay?
Anticipating to me, and you may not agree with this, anticipating means that you're waiting.
Yeah.
That is how you slow down in a piece.
Hmm.
If someone's on off beats, you need to respond to the on beat rather than anticipate the off beat.
Yeah. Well, that's
Because
huge.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I hadn't thought about that distinction before, but I like it. Um,
Mhm.
I notice when I play in similar instrument groups like tuba quartet or trombone quartet, I notice, especially sight reading, we're all kind of waiting, and I think that's the anticipating
Anticipation,
things.
right?
Yeah, and oftentimes the tempo just drags and drags and drags. And so if you're in a group and you're starting to notice, oh, we consistently drag, maybe you're focusing too much on other people and not confident enough in yourself
Mm.
to just trust what everyone's doing. And I think the trust is a big thing. Um,
Trust is a huge thing.
yeah,
Trusting your person, trusting your members. You know,
yeah.
especially low brass, we've talked about before. You and I hang out.
Hmm.
Like, you and I actually spend quite a bit of time together.
You married
And
me.
I did. And for context wise, I married him and his wife. I was the officiant. But yes,
Right, right.
we all know each other at a very, very deep level. We've gotten to know each other. We're all friends. We all drink soda pops together. And we watch TV. We'll go out and do stuff. We'll go to festivals. Like, we spend time together. And I think that's super important, whether it is member to member and as an ensemble in general.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something to knowing the musicians you're playing with. If you're playing music with people, knowing them as on a personal level is really important. Most of the times we're freelancing, right? So we're playing with strangers. Hopefully they become not strangers, and you get calls again and again, and you get to know those people. But
Yeah.
the first time you play with a group, it's a little stressful if you don't know them.
Right.
Just knowing people as people really makes a big difference in the music making process.
I mean, look at how, I mean, this is, look at how our subs are. Like, it's just like you said, we
Hmm.
have more semi-regular gigs around the DMV area, and there's plenty of times where we need to call people to come play with us to fill in. And honestly, half of it, more than half of it, obviously, is do they play well with the group? Do they play well in general? Did they come prepared? The other part is, did they hang out with us? Did they actually like talk to us?
Yeah,
Did they stick around after, or did they just collect the paycheck and go?
right.
Which, there's nothing wrong with those either, and those are needed, but I will tell you 90% of the time I'm going to more likely call the trombonist, the trumpet player, or the horn player that I enjoyed actually like talking to.
Yeah, and in most gig settings for the low brass, we're not playing a whole lot. In
Mhm.
orchestra in particular, we play four notes to the violin's 3,000,
Right.
maybe 10,000, and so we're sitting next to people. One, do you smell bad? Are you
Oh, hygiene.
uh-huh.
Hygiene, man. And especially low brass players, hygiene is
Yeah.
put
Are you
deodorant
showing
on,
up
please.
prepared?
Take
Have you put on?
showers. You know, all of you listening to this that may be listening to this, take a shower, use soap, wash your hair, put
Yeah.
deodorant on. For those of you watching and you want to see more of me and Sam, I'm Marques Ceasar-Lopez. This is Sam Anderson. Please check us out on Cortina Brass and our educational series. So, catch you later.
Bye.